Now that Ponytown has a set of tents and a campsite on the main map, I sat down and wondered what is next for Ponytown? What new item, or rather what new structure is going to come to the game? So I thought I could do a couple of things in this video, and that is take a look at a list of ideas for new buildings that Ponytown can implement on the main map, as well as kind of talk about the likelihood of each of these different things. If you have any buildings that you want to see in Ponytown that isn't on this list, please let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll do a video on that. But first, let's go through this list here. Starting with one of the more out there ideas, and that is a theater. A theater, I think, could actually somewhat work in this game because it's not too technologically advanced. Again, there is like I've said this many times before in the past, but there is kind of a limit on like how advanced technology is allowed to be in this game, or at least that seems to be the case, because we don't have anything too advanced. I think the most advanced thing we have is like a shovel or something like that, right? An oven, I guess, is probably the most advanced thing we have. So a theater is maybe just on the border of being a little bit too advanced, but all the stuff to make the theater already exists in the game. We already have, technically, if you look at the game files, in the event server, we have, of course, these big screens that can stream and stuff like that. So if you have an event, you can have these screens and stuff like that. They could use one of those screens and put it into a theater and have it play whatever you want it to play or something like that, right? And maybe it's like a client-side thing or something, or maybe it's just something that you can put on your own island or something like that and get access to it or something like that, or something, right? Maybe when you go into it, you can activate like a room or something. It's very complicated, I admit, but it is something that would be really cool to see in the game. We already, of course, have the seats and everything like that. Doing it like a stage or something would be really easy. So like if we did like a movie theater, of course, you could have the screens and stuff like that. But I think the best version of this is to just do a theater, like classic. It's a stage, there's like big curtains, big like lights, like literally a stage basically, like stage plays and stuff like that. I think something like that is more likely than like a movie theater, if that makes sense. So a theater in the play sense, I think, is very likely, just because another thing that Ponytown likes to do is implement features and things like that in the game that very much encourage roleplay, and a lot of people already roleplay. Why not give the people a stage to roleplay on? Give them literally a play to put on or something, right? So something along that line would be more likely than a movie theater, but either way, I think this is something that would be a blast to just have in the game somewhere. The next one on my list is actually one of my favorite things, and I've been asking for this forever, especially since we learned that fish and coral and stuff like that is in the game files. I've pretty much wanted this ever since the beach was added, and that is an aquarium. An aquarium would be awesome to have in this game for a number of reasons. Again, we have like the fish and stuff like that in the game files tucked away in there somewhere, so it'd be awesome to implement those, give them some animation or something like that so they can move around in there. And I've always been a huge fan of aquariums in general, just seeing all the fish and everything like that. They could be so, they could have so much fun with it too. I think it would be awesome to see. Again, all the tools, like most of the items are kind of already there, so if they wanted to implement this in the game, it wouldn't be too difficult for them, and that's why I feel like it could be a little bit more likely to happen. It's kind of a 50-50 for me, honestly. I don't really see it happening because it doesn't seem to have much roleplay elements to it or anything like that. It's just something that I personally really want to see, but all the stuff to make it already exists, so who knows? Next up on the list is a barn, and this is something that I think is much more likely than probably the other two things I've said on this list so far, maybe minus the theater. The theater I feel like it could just come, like just out of nowhere, just suddenly all out of nowhere, but a barn seems more likely than the other two things on this list so far, because it doesn't take much to set up a barn. There's already a good spot to put it on the map. You can just tuck it away in the top right corner where the carrot farm is, because there's a carrot farm there, there's a pumpkin farm there, which is really weird. I always thought those two things were weird because they're just there for basically no reason. Why do they exist at all? I don't understand. And who farms carrots like that, right? And who farms pumpkins like that? It's just kind of all over the place. I think they could put a barn up there, completely redo that entire top right corner, readjust the carrot farm to make it look more like an actual farm, readjust the pumpkin farm, maybe just turn it into a completely different farm. So I think a barn farm combo is more likely to happen than anything else on this list. Honestly, it's probably the most likely thing on the list, period. And there's already a perfect spot for it, especially since they technically slightly expanded the map. There's even more space for a barn up there in the top right now. So all I'm saying is A barn is very likely, and I think it would be really good on the map. Now, number 4 on this list, we're going from the most likely thing to one of the least likely things on this list, or at least something a little bit less likely than anything I've said so far, and that is another restaurant. Any kind of restaurant I'm seeing like not really happening anytime soon, just because we already have the bakery and we already have the marketplace. Both of these kind of somewhat act as restaurants. I mean, the bakery definitely acts as a restaurant. I could see them implementing another restaurant sometime in the future because there's a lot of food items in the game and not just baked goods, so we can have something like a pizza restaurant, or just a restaurant that serves like pizza and something else, right? They could implement hamburgers or whatever else. There's a lot of different foods that they can serve in another restaurant, so another restaurant isn't completely impossible, but it's definitely less likely than everything else on this list so far. And I think there is kind of a good spot for it too. Again, you could put this somewhere near the bakery. You could have it be like a rival restaurant or something like that. It could be the little path that's like on the left of the bakery or something like that. Put it over there. There's like picnic tables and stuff there right now, but just put another restaurant there, or maybe put it like below the marketplace or whatever. Just put it somewhere. I think somewhere within that area is a good spot for something like a restaurant or something. But either way, I think this is likely, but I don't think it's definitely going to be the next thing. And it's still less likely than anything else because we don't need 2 restaurants because we already have one. Now we're getting into something else that would be just awesome, like super amazing to have, but again is even less likely than anything else we've described so far, and that is an observatory. Some kind of observatory building would be really awesome to have. You can put this in like the top of the map, maybe kind of a little bit to the top left, but not quite the top left. Somewhere up there high in the mountains, and you could just have an observatory building. You go in there and you could interact with different telescopes and stuff like that, and it would like bring up a pop-up that shows you like stars and stuff like that, and you could play with constellations or something like that. Maybe you could make your own constellations like how you can in Animal Crossing or something like that, and then you can like share it to other people or something. There could be some cool fun things you can do with it. Maybe there's some other reward for like messing with constellations or something like that. Maybe if you do certain constellations, you get certain messages, or you get certain rewards, like, oh, you get like a star kind of item that you can hold around in your mouth or something like that. This would be just awesome to have. I love space, I love these kinds of things, but this is very unlikely to happen just because this seems very different from anything they've done so far in the game, so it feels weird for them to start going more science-y all of a sudden. Of course, we have had some science-y-esque kind of stuff before in the past. Of course, we have like aliens on a poster somewhere. I think there actually is an observatory on a poster, so maybe it's not as unlikely as I thought, but there's definitely some science-y-esque stuff there tucked away in the game, but I still don't think this is very likely. However, it would be very awesome to have. And next up, we're going to get into a little bit slightly of a more likely thing. Again, I don't really think this is going to happen, at least not the next structure is definitely probably not going to be this, and it's still very unlikely, I think. But something that's a little bit more likely than the last 2 things, I think, would be something like an arcade. Now, it wouldn't necessarily have to be like a full-on arcade where there's like arcade machines everywhere and stuff like that, but I think some kind of building that has a bunch of different games in it. You can have like board games on a table. You could have, it could be like basically a local game shop. It has like board games on the table. You could have like pinball or something like that. You don't have to have like those big arcade cabinets basically in the room. However, those being in there would obviously make a lot of sense, but they could add pool tables to it, air hockey tables to it or something like that. And the idea of this structure is more so that it's not just like a building with a bunch of items in it that you can interact with. The idea is that it's a building and you can interact with each of these different like little games and stuff like that, and maybe invite other people to play with you as well. And this could be a building that sort of serves as a way to implement mini games more into the game. Of course, I don't think like this is the best way to implement mini games to Ponytown, but eventually minigames are going to come to the game, and one way that they could do it is to literally just add a building that's an arcade. You go in there and a bunch of different stuff you can interact with to start some minigames. I think it's possible, I think it's likely, but not super likely. It's definitely lower on the list, but it is up there. I think something like this could eventually come. Now next up, this is our second for last one, we have a hospital. I think a hospital is something that is somewhat likely. Again, this is getting to the point of where like it might just not fit quite. It just feels like a little bit of an advanced thing for some reason. I don't know why it feels that advanced to me. People love lab role plays, hospital role plays, these kinds of things. Like they like to pretend to be doctors and stuff like that. You see it all the time in like Town, for example. They have hospitals in there, or like little hospital wings or doctor rooms, basically. I don't know how to describe them other than what they are. People go there all the time and they role play being injured or whatever. Obviously, it works a lot better in something like Town because you can actually get injured in the game, and there's built more around like combat and things like that. But something similar to that in Ponytown makes a little bit of sense to me, just because we already know, like the game, like the devs already know that formula works. They already know that it would work because it works in Town and similar games like that. So a hospital is kind of likely. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. Now, on the same vein, we're going to go to our last one, which I don't think is very likely either, and that is a police station. I think a police station, of course, would be an interesting building. I don't really know much what we could do with it, but it would obviously have jail cells in it and stuff like that, and of course, people would love to roleplay using those with like lab roleplays or whatever else. I think people would have fun with both of these things. I think they would have fun with them in a different way, though. Like, it's a police station, but we're going to be playing with the jail cell more than we're going to pretend to be cops and stuff, I think is what would happen. Either way, though, I think it's a little bit unlikely. It might be more likely than a hospital, but who's to say, honestly? But let me know in the comments below what you think. What is your favorite thing on my list here? And do you have anything that you think could come to the game, or any just structure ideas in general? I'd love to just take a look at a big list of ideas for Ponytown involving just structures alone, and just kind of reviewing all of them, kind of talking about them and how I feel about them, and which is more likely than which. Let me know all that stuff in the comments below, and please, please, please do remember to like, subscribe, share, and do all those wonderful things like that, because when you do wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself, and I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.